Okay, how's everybody doing this evening? Of course, my name is Kent. I'm making my fourth Cornhusker video. I said I wouldn't make any more unless I found something interesting to talk about, and I think I have something interesting to talk about tonight. I want to talk about Deion Sanders getting the Colorado football job, head football coach for the University of Colorado. I think he should have gone to Nebraska. I wished he would have gone to Nebraska. I think it would have been a better choice than Matt Rhule, and I'll tell you why in this video. One of the reasons why I think he wanted to go to Nebraska is because when some rumors came out that he was, somebody had dropped the rumor about him in Nebraska, he actually mentioned Nebraska in one of his press conferences. He goes, well, yeah, somebody, while they got all these rumors going on, somebody connected me with Nebraska, So he dropped the Nebraska name. He wouldn't have done that if he wasn't interested. That was almost like a hint to Nebraska. Hey, I'm interested. So he dropped the Nebraska name in a press conference. I think he would have loved to have gone to Nebraska. He played during Nebraska's glory years, so he knows what kind of support Nebraska has. He knew what kind of fans they had. He knew what kind of resources and facilities they had. He wanted to get out of Jackson State. It's kind of funny because I didn't follow Deion Sanders. In fact, I was shocked to hear he's 55 years old. That kind of scares me because I'm a lot older than him. So when I saw this Jackson State stuff, I thought it was just reality TV. I didn't even know it was a real university. So it's pretty funny that, I just thought it was all show. I didn't really even think it was real football. But the guy's done very well. He connects well with players. He approaches this almost like, a spiritual thing instead of a football thing. He connects with these kids in a way that nobody, most other coaches or almost any other coach can do it. And if you want to think about Deion Sanders, think about the anti-Scott Frost. Scott Frost came into the program, and Scott Frost was, I'm going to return Nebraska to its glory days. Deion Sanders comes into these programs and says, I'm going to connect with these kids. And I'm going to talk to them in a spiritual way. And I'm going to talk to them in a way that I'm going to say, look, I'm going to help you. I'm going to guide you. I want you to help your family. I want you to help yourself. I want you to be the best you can be. And we're going to do this together. And I'm going to be, I'm going to be there for you. That's the way he approaches it. He doesn't approach it from the fact that I'm going to come in and make Nebraska great again like Scott Frost did, which we know that didn't work out so well. He comes in more like, I'm focusing on the players. I'm focusing on these kids. And I'm going to talk to them about stuff that nobody else wants to talk to them about. A lot of people in this world are afraid to talk spiritual things, afraid to bring up God, afraid to say these kind of things in front of people because they, especially on university campuses, because you talk about spiritual matters, God, how God picks people for certain positions and places and how he leads people and does things like that. He's able to bring that stuff into the football context. And, these kids want to hear that. They want to hear that there's a higher power. There's something bigger than themselves, that there's something there that they can fall back on, some spiritual guidance, some spiritual force. I get a kick out of, I like history. And one of the great stories of history that I love was that Joseph Stalin, during the dark days of World War II, when the Nazis were invading the Soviet Union, of course, they'd been working very hard to get rid of religion, shutting down all the churches, persecuting people for religion, trying to basically remove religion from people's lives. But when the chips were down, the Germans were invading, they were hopeless. He opened all the churches up again. Joseph Stalin opened all the churches again, allowed people to start going to church and start connecting with the higher power. And of course, the Soviets rallied and were able to, win the war. Well, that's what a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for some spiritual guidance, some spiritual help, some spiritual information and stuff. And that's Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders talked quite a bit today in the conference that I listened to him talk about how he felt he was led by God to come to Colorado and how God uses people that you wouldn't think would be used in that way. Like he's laughing about the fact I'm going to Colorado. I'm a kid from Florida, living in Texas, and now I'm going to Colorado, and that God chooses people and puts them in places that they don't ordinarily think they're going to be or go. And this is what he was talking about. So he's bringing a spiritual message to these young men who are in search of some answers in life, some help, some guidance. And then he's not only doing that, he's saying, and I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna prepare you. I'm gonna be with you. I'm gonna guide you. I'm gonna make sure that the players, my coaches, my team, when they're on campus, it's yes sir, yes ma'am, open doors, polite, courteous, all this stuff. So he says, I'm gonna be there for you. And you know what? If you don't do that, you're gonna be talking to me. So he's able to bring all this together, focus on the player, focus on, in a great message. He's a little bit funny, he's a little bit sarcastic, sometimes it's a little bit odd, but the whole thing is he's captivating these kids' imaginations. And I'll tell you, if I was a young man today and I was looking to play for a coach, I'd be wanting to play for a guy like Deion Sanders. I listen to Matt Rhule, seems like an intelligent guy, probably a great coach, but I just don't think he's going to captivate kids' imaginations like Deion Sanders. And that's why I think Nebraska missed a huge opportunity by not getting Deion Sanders. It's kind of interesting. I listened to Johnny Rogers and Eric Crouch on a YouTube video, and they both seemed a little bit concerned about the Matt Rhule decision. And not that Matt Rhule may not be the worst coach in the world, but man, did Nebraska sell out to get Matt Rhule? Give him, a 10-year contract for $74 million? That's like you just threw everything. You're all in. It's like you're playing poker and all the chips in the middle of the table. It's like they didn't give themselves any way out. And to be that sure on a guy, and everybody talks about Matt Rhule, how he's a program builder, how he was at Baylor, and how he was at Temple. Was it Temple that he was at? One of the other, I think Temple and Baylor. I don't even know the schools, minor schools. But he was there during the days of non-NIL and non-portal. So can he build a program in today's world? Deion Sanders has already proven he's gotten some top recruits to go to Jackson State. He's done better at a school that lacks even good uniforms, because he talked in one of his videos about how, hey, we got you guys uniforms, blah, blah, blah. So, he didn't even have resources to buy good uniforms. So he's getting top players to schools that are even struggling to get good uniforms. Facilities aren't that great. When he was at Colorado today, walking around, he was mentioning, wow, the facilities you guys have and what we have at Jackson State, there's no comparison. So, here's a guy that, you bring a young man onto campus. He's getting these kids to come, and I'll tell you, tomorrow they're going to probably announce officially he's the coach. He'll be getting some top players coming to Colorado right out of the gate. And, this is all changed. If you want to know why how it's changed, just look at a guy like Ernest Hausman. Here's a kid that grew up in Nebraska, was being developed pretty well in Nebraska, but he's in the transfer portal right now. So kids just aren't going to stick to a program because it's where you grew up and your dad used to play at in that university. They're going to stick to a program because they got a player or leader like Deion Sanders who's going to interact with them and really be a part of their lives. Unlike a guy like Scott Frost. Scott Frost came in with the message that, hey, I'm going to bring Nebraska back to its former glory days. And that didn't work out very well. Deion Sanders comes in and says, look, I want to bring you into Colorado, and I want to develop you spiritually. I want to develop you as a football player. We're going to win, and I want to develop you spiritually. I want to make sure you do the right things. I want to make sure you get an education. I want to make sure you better your life and you better all the people's lives around you. I want you to come in here and not be on your phones. I want you to pay attention. I want you to know that you can change your life, by getting into the pros or by getting a coaching job or something like that, or getting a great education. Not that educations are as good as they used to be, but, he's telling these kids what stuff that they need to hear and that they want to hear, that they want to have some help with, versus somebody like a Matt Rhule who's just going to come in and go, we're going to develop kids and we got a process in place and, that's what we're going to do. We don't know that Matt Rhule's way of doing this is going to work in NIL world and the world of portal, like Ernest Hausman's in the portal. We don't know if he's going to be able to keep kids around or not. And that's another thing I want to stress tonight. I think with NIL and the portal, you're going to have to be recruiting your team all the time. So it's not like you recruit the kid, he's going to be here for 4 years, and we're going to 5 years if he redshirts, and we don't have to worry about it. No, you're going to have to recruit your kids every single day of every year. You're going to have to be recruiting these kids. The only way you can do that is have a relationship with them. and have a relationship with them to the point where they look up to you as kind of a spiritual guidance, or somebody that can help guide them through difficult times or difficult decisions, or if you're injured or anything like that. They want to have somebody that connects with them daily, somebody that can be a part of their lives, know their families, know everything. Unlike a guy like Scott Frost. Scott Frost seems to come in as soon as his plan didn't work, as soon as the idea that bringing Nebraska back to the glory days wasn't going to resonate with the players, then he kind of got withdrawn. And I think he got, sounds like he showed up late to meetings and all kinds of stuff. He just didn't know what to do. But, he just didn't have the personality to go and connect with these young men, and bring them in. And, let me tell you, think about the Scott Frost era. I think the first game, everybody was so high on Scott Frost. The very first game got canceled because of bad weather, lightning storm. What was the very next game that kind of set the tone for the Scott Frost next 3 or 4 years? Colorado. I think they played Colorado close and they lost very, very late in the game. Well, guess what? Next year we're going to find out real quickly who made the better decision. If Colorado made the better decision with Deion Sanders, or if Nebraska made the better decision with Matt Rhule, because they're going to play next year right away. So let's hope we don't have a repeat of the Scott Frost era, when he gets off to the wrong foot because he gets beat by Colorado right out of the gate. And then they go back next year and get beat again. So Colorado's kind of been our nemesis. In fact, when I was growing up watching Nebraska, we always disliked Colorado more than we disliked Oklahoma. We always respected Oklahoma. We always disliked Colorado. So Nebraska has always had these times with Colorado that Colorado just was the biggest pain in the neck that they could ever have. And here we go again next year. Rhule against Deion Sanders. And I can guarantee you who's going to do the better recruiting this fall or this spring. It's going to be Deion Sanders. I can guarantee you he's going to bring his kid in. That he's a hell of a quarterback. I watched him play. They're going to have a great quarterback running that Colorado offense. And so it's going to be an interesting game, Matt Rhule against Deion Sanders. And you know what? Deion Sanders, you hate to even think about this kind of stuff, but you think of a kid like Malachi Coleman. Guess what? Who Deion Sanders is going to be talking to? Malachi Coleman. And another thing, Nebraska used to pull quite a few players out of the Denver area. Look at can't think of the kid that was a quarterback here a few years ago. McCaffrey come from Colorado. And there's been over the years been a lot of people come from Colorado. So now you got Deion Sanders in that Denver, Boulder metropolitan area, which is still within probably a little over 500 miles of Lincoln, Nebraska. Well, you're not going to get any more players out of there that are any good, because Deion Sanders is going to have that completely locked down. In fact, I was kind of shocked to hear, and I didn't even know this. Not only did Scott Frost lose Joe Burrow, well, Joe Burrow wanted to come to Nebraska badly, didn't get to come because Scott Frost nixed that deal. But the kid that's playing at TCU is from Council Bluffs. I didn't even know that till today. I was watching it, and here he is. He's got their TCU in the football playoff, and he is from Council Bluffs. Nebraska couldn't even get a kid from Council Bluffs to come to the University of Nebraska. That's 50 miles away. Now you got Deion Sanders kind of in the same area that we're in, that we're recruiting from, and Deion Sanders is going to out-recruit Matt Rhule. In my opinion, Deion Sanders has got a much better message. If I was a young man and I listened to both of them, in fact, I've listened to all the stuff Deion Sanders has said here recently. I've listened to all the stuff Matt Rhule said here recently. I know where I'd be going. I'd be going to Colorado. Like I say, I grew up in Nebraska, and I've been in Nebraska most of my life. So I can see how these young guys are going to have a real tough time. With a guy like Deion Sanders who really connects and wants to be a part of their lives. In fact, I got a kick out of him. You get so tired of the coach speak. Scott Frost did it really badly, and everybody does it really badly. In fact, my second best favorite coach in the country is Kirk Ferentz. I love Kirk Ferentz. The reason I love Kirk Ferentz is he's so good at it. He loves the coach speak. And he is such a professional. He'll never win the national championship. Like everybody says, he's going to win the big game. He's not going to win the big games, but he's going to win a lot of games, and he's going to keep people happy. But I love Kirk Ferentz because he is just the rote. If there ever was a rote coach, he's the rote coach. He's the coach that does everything the way he's supposed to do it, but doesn't do anything, outside the lines. I mean, he always stays right in the lines, and I always find him kind of interesting. I enjoy him because he's just kind of like the dichotomy. He's just the absolute opposite of a guy like Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is, he's preaching to the choir. I mean, he's preaching. He's up there. He's evangelizing. He's going at it hard at it. And a guy like Kirk Ferentz, he's just very coach speak, very this, very that. And that's not going to work in today's world of NIL and portals, because if these kids don't feel a connection with the coach, they're just going to leave. Like Ernest Hausmann. They're just going to get out of this. So you got to recruit your players every day, all day long, and that's something that Matt Rhule hasn't done yet. Matt Rhule hasn't had to re-recruit his players. He didn't have to do it at Baylor. Didn't have to do it at Temple. He's not sitting there and you got a roster full of kids. And any day, anytime these transfer portals will open, I guess it opens up tomorrow. So you're going to see a lot of activity tomorrow. So yeah, anytime these portals open up, these kids can leave and they're gone. So you got to recruit your players. And the only way to recruit these players is to get involved with them at a personal level. And that's tough to do. That takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of personality, and it takes a lot of motivation. See, the thing about Deion Sanders, he pulls from his own life experiences. He grew up without a father. He grew up poor. He grew up with his mother working 3 jobs. So he uses all this energy, all this motivation that he had, and now look at him. The guy's wealthy. He's got a $5 million a year job. He changed his life, and now he's trying to project that onto these kids, and that's what he's telling them. He's going, hey, I was where you were at. I was a college player. I didn't come from a great family. I didn't have all these things growing up, and look what I did. You can do the same, and I'm going to help you do it. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to be there for you, and we're going to talk about God. We're going to talk about how God has a plan for you, how God wants to help you, and we're going to make sure you do everything right. See, he's going to get personally involved with these players, and he's going to keep them in the program. So he's going to motivate him to stay around versus, a guy like Matt Rhule. Is Matt Rhule going to be that close to his players? Is Matt Rhule going to be recruiting his players, or is Matt Rhule, going to be Scott Frost? Coaches, it's a different landscape. When I was growing up, and most of the time, coaches were kind of like they were authority figures. You didn't get that involved with them. And most of us growing up, especially in my generation, we were, whatever spiritual beliefs and thinking and foundation we had, we got from home. We didn't get it from, school. We went to school, and school was school, church was church, home was home. These kids today, it all kind of comes together. It's all kind of together. So yeah, a guy like Deion Sanders has the gift to get in these kids' lives and project good things in their lives by saying good things to them. So I think he's going to be a great coach, and I think Nebraska hugely missed out by not getting Deion Sanders. This is probably one of the most massive mistakes Nebraska's ever made. They've made some huge mistakes here. Hiring some of the coaches they've hired, losing some of the players they've lost, and now they messed up on a coach. I hope that Rhule does well. I'm pulling for him because even though I'm talking the way I'm talking about Deion Sanders, saying, hey, if I was a young player, I'd rather play for him. I still grew up in Nebraska. I've still been a Nebraska fan all my life. Probably won't change because that's just who I am. But I'll tell you, these young kids are going to see this a whole lot differently than I did when I was growing up. They're looking at this entirely differently. The other thing that I noticed with Deion is he's into the social media. In fact, when he talked to his players, he got done with talking to them, and he had this thing. He says, we're coming. I'm going to go back and take care of a little bit of business back in Jackson, but we're coming. And at the end of the speech, he looked at everybody. He says, okay, we're going to do this for the social media. Everybody turned and said, we're coming. And he had his son, I guess, videoing it, and they're going to put it up on social media. So he's connecting with these kids not only spiritually, getting involved with their lives, he's talking to them in a world that they understand, the social media world, which is the world that we're living in. A lot of these young kids are big on social media, which, in my opinion, is a good way of going. Being in social media, just like what I'm doing tonight. I think that's a very, very good way to go in this today's tech. And he's all into this social media thing. That's one thing I didn't like about Mickey Joseph. Mickey Joseph had a press conference one time, and he said his brother said, "Don't get off of Twitter. Don't get on Twitter." You know, I think that's a mistake. I think you got to be on Twitter. I think you got to be doing social media, especially if you're out trying to expose yourself to these young people that are, you know, these young men that are wanting to play football, because that's how, you know, they're finding people. You know, it's like me. I didn't know anything about. I mean, this is funny because when Nebraska hired Matt Rhule, I didn't know who Matt Rhule was. I mean, I heard about him about a week before they announced him. And of course, I had done my research on him before that. You know, I did watch videos. No idea, never heard his name before. But when somebody mentioned Deion Sanders, I knew who Deion Sanders was. Why did I know who Deion Sanders was? Even though I don't follow pro football or follow Jackson State or anything, because he's on social media. I mean, I'd be spinning through, you know, videos, and all of a sudden there'd be a random video. I mean, I wouldn't watch it because I didn't have any reason to watch it, but I saw Deion Sanders, and I'm thinking, oh wow, he's still around. You know, it's been a long time, and but he's involved with social media, and you know, is Matt Rhule going to be able to be that heavily involved with social media? I'll tell you, Matt Rhule's got his work cut out for him. He's got to recruit his team, recruit a bunch of players, and he's going up against some pretty doggone good football teams. The Big Ten, you know, 20 years ago, there's a lot of schools, they just kind of ignored football, and they were institutions of higher learning, universities. And of course, athletics wasn't that important to them. Well, now with these football contracts and all this other stuff, these TV contracts, these schools are starting to pay a little bit more attention. And of course, when the coaches start making $5-10 million a year, let me tell you what, the resources get poured into these programs. So, you know, this is a whole new era of football. This is a whole new time of football, you know, they got to get up to speed. They got to get up to speed, and you know, you got to be doing the social media. You got to be connecting with these kids at a very intimate level. You got to be talking to their families. You got to be talking to them. You got to be you got to be there. And of course, this fits his personality. He says he loves it. And in fact, another thing I got kind of a kick out of is he had a couple good little things he said during his press conference. Quick things he said. You know, things pretty quick-witted. You know, things he said pretty interesting. And you know, he kind of got rolling there a little bit. And I'm sure he's had, you know, a little bit of adrenaline going here. He played in a championship game, and now he got his head coaching job, got on a private plane, came up to Colorado, got the tour facilities that, you know, far better than what he has. Now he knows his son's going to go to a better school, get better exposure. So he's probably a little bit excited. So, you know, he gets there and he starts talking, and you know, talks a pretty good line. And then they get to the point where they're coming down to the end of the press conference, and he goes, wow, he goes, I'm just getting going. He goes, I'm enjoying this, and we're already done. He goes, I want to keep going. I love this. I want to keep going. See, this is his personality. This is why he makes a great coach. This is why he connects with players. This is why I got the #1 recruit to go to Jackson State. This is why tomorrow morning when that transfer portal opens up, he's going to have a bunch of top players signed up to go to the University of Colorado. And what do we have at Nebraska? We got Matt Rhule, who, you know, sometime in the past was supposed to be a program builder at 2 schools that weren't really great football schools and didn't really have any big wins. And he has to learn the NIL, he's got to learn the transfer portal, and he's got to develop a personality where he can connect with these kids and get them to be, you know, 100% committed to the University of Nebraska and not transfer out, you know, every time something bad happens, or every time they feel like, you know, hey, I want to test the waters. I want to find out who else is interested in my, you know, how well I play. So yeah, you know, got the sirens coming past. I don't know if to make it here or not. So I'll let it pass for a second. Looks like it's going the other direction. So yeah, I think Nebraska, doggone it, can't get it right. And I would ask anybody, if you don't think what I'm saying is true, go watch a Deion Sanders video, and then go watch a Matt Rhule video and see who inspires you. I appreciate you watching.